some of our staff how with the pandemic and us trying to social distance and splitting people up outside, inside, online, even though we don't have as many people in the room as we used to have pre-pandemic, people have been locked up at home alone, and the volume of singing for fewer people is quite impressive. Really loving it. I think it's because we've all gone a little stir crazy, right? Or we've just been singing alone in the shower, and we're just ready to hear a live band. I know I get excited about it. So we introduced this for the first time a few weeks ago. So if you remember it, sing along, and if not, we'll show you how it goes. And peace be still, calm this storm. I need you here now. Restore my hope, and I confess I've been afraid. Remind my heart, Lord, increase my faith. So I will run into the waves as courage comes to take fear's place with perfect love, perfect love. Oh, what can take away my hallelujah? No darkness can contain my hallelujah. Your love has made a way for my hallelujah, my hallelujah. You give life no man can take, no power in hell could separate, and all that happens and what's to come, there's no obstructing your perfect love. So I will run into the waves as courage comes to take its place with perfect love, perfect love. Sing it out. Oh, what can take away my hallelujah? No darkness can contain my hallelujah. Your love has made a way for my hallelujah, my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Thank you for singing with us. You can have a seat.
Hey Watershed, my name is Matt Sharp. I've been attending Watershed for a little over 14 years.
And my name is Jay Galligan, and I am a proud pandemic watershedder. And we have decided for our book club to do the book Faith After Doubt by Brian McLaren.
Knowing that whether you become the Watershed for a few months or years or 14 plus years, doubt is prevalent with everyone. And we thought this would be a great book to wrestle with faith and doubt and everything in between. We're starting the book on Monday, October 11th, and we're wrapping up on Monday, November 22nd.
And this will be a hybrid block, so Zoom and in person, and we'll be meeting Mondays at 7 p.m. Hope to see y'all there.
Well, good morning, Watershed. I feel like I should dance during that last part. It was a little longer, right? Don't worry, I won't do that. My name is Matt. I'm one of the co-pastors here. If you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook Live, just want to say good morning to you as well. How many of you, by just a show of hands, would kind of self-describe the way Jake did? You're a watershedder, pandemicer kind of person? Yeah, quite a few of you. All right, a few of you at least. Well, this is really a great season for whether you're brand new or whether you've been around for a while, because there's quite a few opportunities for you to get connected, get involved in either book clubs or blocks. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to sign up for the book club that Matt and Jake just referenced, you can do that on the Watershed app. Also in the Watershed app, there is a multitude of opportunities to sign up for. If you click on the link or the panel there, it kind of invites you into different opportunities to consider. Also Preface, which is kind of the introduction to Watershed, an experience for where people begin to kind of take the experiences of their past and start to understand how that fits really uniquely and profoundly, we would argue, here at Watershed as we move on together, move forward together. All of those are opportunities that you can access through the Watershed app. I want to make you aware of those today and would love to have you get connected this fall. I am the sort of Match.com when it comes to people getting connected to some of these things. So if you start to engage the process and you start to hit a wall or you're like, I'm still not sure what to do, Matt@watershed.charlotte.com is my email, and I am more than happy to help walk you through that or help you find what you're looking for if we have the thing that's available for you on that front. So I want to make you aware of that. Also, if you were walking in this morning and you happen to notice on the wall outside of this room, there's a board with all these different sticky notes. If you were here last weekend, you heard Blair Gore talk about the opportunity for people to get involved with our greenhouse. And there's several open spots over the next several months. And what our greenhouse kids are requesting of you and what Blair is requesting of us is if she can find a handful of adults that would be willing to volunteer 3 times over the next 3 months, then all of those spots get filled, and our kids have they have folks who are investing in them and caring for them and helping them grow in their spiritual pursuits in life. Those are just really incredible opportunities for you to take part in. Rumor has it, and I don't know if it's a rumor. All I know is every Sunday morning I walk into our staff house and Blair is cooking eggs. And she's cooking eggs because she's cooking breakfast for greenhouse volunteers. I'm not saying that's going to happen every Sunday for the rest of eternity, but for the past 6 Sundays, that's what I've seen. So if you want breakfast, if that's a way of kind of churning interest for you, and if you want coffee, because there's always coffee. Again, those are shameless plugs, and will appeal to the very basic instincts of us to eat and have coffee. Would love to have you be a part of that. Also, Heart Math Tutoring is ramping back up this fall. And if you're unfamiliar with Heart Math Tutoring, for the past several years, we have supplied this organization with volunteers. The premise is we come alongside of a kid and tutor them either in person or virtually, specifically in the area of math. It's elementary age kids, so as long as you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, which covers most of us in this room, if you can do that, then you can invest in a kid, and it's really helpful because it gives them helps them get over the hurdle in several different ways in some of their educational endeavors. We've got a goal set of about 10 volunteers that we need, which means 10 students. We want to help 10 students this fall. I think we're almost halfway there, but if you're interested in doing that, also on the app, there's a way for you to engage. And then finally, again, everything that we do here is because of the willingness of folks like yourself to channel or source us with your time, your energy, and your dollars. And so thank you again for those of you who continue to take that part seriously. If you're interested in being a part of what it means to give here at Watershed, you can access, again, a tab or a panel on the Watershed app, as well as our website, and there's secure ways to do that. It takes a little over $13,000 each weekend for that to take place, for us to be able to generate the type of energy, both internally and externally, as we all attempt to awaken, struggle, and love as though a different world is possible today. Thank you again for this morning, for being here, and hope your day is filled with joy and filled with anticipation. Thanks.
So when I heard that we were doing this series, weaving in literature that would normally be maybe more like a storybook or for children, but also connecting all of us to our sense of wonder, our childlike side that most of us lose with each year and get a little more jaded. It's just kind of what life does, right? And this is one of those songs that I've loved so much but wasn't ever really sure how or why it would fit in a service until I knew we were doing this series, and it kind of fits like a glove. And although it was written specifically for a certain story about a certain woman, I want to just invite you to take a moment to think about maybe like 7-year-old you. Whether it was good, bad, otherwise, who you were, who you thought you'd be, where you think you'd be, what you still had to discover, maybe where the disparity is between what you imagined and where you are, but also the fact that that you is still there, and it's really easy to forget. I'm reminded of that every time my sons invite me onto the trampoline, and I think, I'm not as young as I think I am. There are things I could do here that I can't still. But as we enter into some moments where we're invited into that awe and that wonder again, just to revisit a little bit of at our core who for time. She is all of this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine.
Hi. You got a second? Okay. You remember how when we were younger we used to run around and hang out with Blue and find clues and talk to Mr. Salt and freak out about the mail and do all the fun stuff? And then one day I was like, oh hey, guess what? Big news. I'm leaving. This is my brother Joe. He's your new best friend. And then I got on a bus and I left. And we didn't see each other for like a really long time. Can we just talk about that? Great. Because I realized that was kind of abrupt. I just kind of got up and went to college. And that was really challenging, by the way, but great, because I got to use my mind and take a step at a time, and now I literally am doing many of the things that I wanted to do. And then look at you, and look at all you have done, and all you have accomplished in all that time. And it's just so amazing, right? I mean, we started out with clues, and now it's what? Student loans, and jobs, and families, and some of it has been kind of hard. You know? I know you know. And I wanted to tell you that I really couldn't have done all of that without your help. And in fact, all the help that you helped me with when we were younger is still helping me today, right now. And that's super cool. I guess I just wanted to say that after all these years, I never forgot you, ever. And I'm super glad we're still friends. Thanks for listening. You look great, by the way. Whatever it is you're doing, it's working.
So, this wasn't what I was planning on talking about originally. But I saw that video a couple weeks ago, and I realized in the moment that my planned contribution to this series, which was going to be around a children's book and things like that, my heart wasn't really in it. I didn't have skin in the game, so to speak. The book that I was going to talk about was meaningful, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want you to be disappointed now that I'm doing this instead of that. But I saw this video, and it, the one you just watched, I mean, and it hit me in a certain way. And it stuck, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I showed up a couple weeks ago, and I was like, hey guys, can I pivot? And we had to navigate some copyright things and things like that, but I was able to do it. And once I had made that decision, then I had a new problem. The video with Steve, and by the way, I'm just kind of taking for granted here that you had some context for what you just watched. That on some level, even, like Kevin Bacon degrees of separation, you are familiar with Blue's Clues conceptually and Steve Burns, the original host. I'm just kind of taking that for granted. If not, welcome to Watershed. But my next challenge was, okay, well, what am I actually going to say about it? It made me feel something inside. How do I put words to that? And I was going for a run, which was kind of miserable. And on Monday, and I realized something in that moment. I realized part of what I was wrestling with was that the feelings that I was feeling, they weren't all positive. There was a number of emotions hitting me simultaneously, and I needed a way to address that or articulate it. And so here's what I landed on. And I'm just going to ask for some grace here, because I've never done anything like this in any context from the stage. But what I decided to do was imagine what I might say back to Steve. As someone who both grew up with Blue's Clues, in particular Steve, Joe and Josh are fine, but I'm a Steve guy. But also whose kids now have grown up on Blue's Clues. It's in the little pop-down TV in our minivan every day, every time we drive. I know all the songs, all the goofy characters. So it's part of my life. And so I wanted to imagine, what would I say to Steve? So that's what I'm going to share with you. And I think it might start like this. Dear Steve, it's really, really good to see you. And I feel a lot of things right now as I see you, memories, a kind of nostalgia. Because when you came into my life, Steve, well, for one, I was much younger. But two, my world was much simpler then. And trying to figure out what Blue wanted to eat for a snack seemed like, yeah, that was definitely worth our time. And so seeing you again brought all of that rushing back. Remembering a time in my life when, we would sit around a circle on the floor and use felt boards to learn about the big things in life, and life lessons about being kind and friendship and things like that. And it got me thinking about other things that were true at that time. Do you ever hear something, see something, taste something, smell something, and it takes you back, almost like a form of time travel, Steve? And you get this sense it's like a wound, but it doesn't really hurt. There's a warmth to it as you recall what life was like then and how you felt and maybe what you miss. And there's a warmth to it. I think that's what nostalgia is, but and a longing to go back because man, things were good then. There were things that you looked forward to, simple pleasures, running around the neighborhood. All the adults in your life seem kind of cool. Maybe you want to be one of those someday. And that's what I felt at first. That's what I felt at first when I first watched this, is a kind of nostalgia. And in reflecting on that nostalgia and giving myself permission to sort of long for that time in my life, to reminisce about the relationships and the associations and the things I was looking forward to and the things that would get me excited at that time, a few weeks ago, kind of on a whim, I wanted to see if I could remember and write down, not in order, God, I'm not a monster, but remember all of the original 151 Pokemon. I did it. Took me about an hour. But that was the same sort of feeling, that same sort of nostalgia for a simpler, happier time in my life that I experienced when Steve, popped back up on Twitter again a couple weeks ago in that video that we just shared. But again, as I wrestled with these feelings, I realized that the warmth and the fuzziness and the nostalgia and the positive vibes, it wasn't really capturing the whole picture. And it got me thinking, studying a little bit, and throughout my week, I heard a word on a podcast that I listened to. The word is anemoia. It's actually a made-up word. It's not in the real dictionary. It comes from another resource, an internet resource called the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. That's a thing. The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And what anemoia is it's a nostalgia for a time that you never knew. It's kind of misremembering, a retroactive fantasy. Because a fantasy is future-oriented. It's imagining, it's desiring something that you think is going to make you whole. And the insidious thing about fantasy is that it won't make you whole. And if you actually get the thing, you'll probably feel some profound sense of melancholy or disappointment. The simplest example of this is just like generic buyer's remorse. Or maybe, to, tap into our inner child again, that feeling you feel on Christmas morning when, after anticipating for months and weeks, you finally get there and you tear off the wrapping paper and you get the presents and it's like, all right, is that it? You begin the whole process again for the next 365 days. I don't know if I'm speaking something that's relatable, but for me, Boxing Day, the 26th, was always like the most depressing time of the year. Anemoia, though, it's retrospective. It's longing for a time in your life that you choose, perhaps as a defense mechanism, to remember as wholly positive. Whole. Complete. Nostalgic. But when you give yourself permission to actually explore those memories, perhaps you realize that it's not quite that simple. And so as I continued to reflect on what I might say to Steve, my thoughts began to evolve a little bit. And so I would continue, "Dear Steve, what the hell, man? You just left. We had a good thing going. Things were simple. Things were straightforward. Things were safe. And that was not true after you were gone. It was like 1997, and then like after that, woof. Like 9/11 happened, and then there was all these wars. You already talked about student debt. There was the thing with the subprime mortgages. That sucked. And you weren't there. And if I'm being perfectly honest, Steve, all those lessons about kindness and all of our imaginary friends, they didn't help. The soap couldn't wash off the pain. The salt and the pepper couldn't make things taste better. There was never enough time, tickety-tock. What do I need a shovel and pail for? You weren't there, and things got hard. And I know you say you know, but how do I know? I was by myself, and you were gone. At college. I went to college too, Steve. Wasn't all it's cracked up to be. And a little expensive. Take out student loans, they said. You'll get a good job, they said. Don't worry about debt. Go to the business school. Don't get that English major. I want to get the English major. Don't get the English major. I got the English major. How do you like bartending? I like it a lot now. Where were you, Steve? Where were you, Steve, when that relationship didn't work out the way that I had planned? Where were you when I got turned down for that job, and that job, and that job, and that job? Where were you when the mortgage application was rejected? Where were you when I stopped hearing from that person and I still don't know why? And it wasn't just that you weren't there. It was the abruptness of all of it. It was as if one day the world made sense, and then the next day you just didn't fit in it the way you used to, and I didn't have language for that. It was like we were building something and it all got unbuilt. And it was really liberating to imagine saying this to Steve. Because on the one hand, he wasn't wrong. Part of what was happening is I was using my mind. And step by step, I was beginning to realize that a lot of those things that I thought were true about the world, that made so much sense when I was younger and things seemed simpler, was more complicated than that. And there was a bitterness, a cynicism, an angst, an alienation at realizing that maybe Steve didn't prepare me as thoroughly as he could have. And that got me reflecting. There's a passage in Scripture that I am particularly fond of, so much so that I talk about it incessantly, probably, I think every message or talk or sermon or whatever we call these, certainly don't know what I'm calling it today, that I've done in the last, probably 9 months. I make reference to the end of the book of Mark. It's my favorite of the Gospels. And just a little play-by-play about what happens at the end of the book of Mark. So everyone's excited. First, Jesus, yeah. Everything's gonna go this certain way, and the bad guys are gonna go away, and the good guys are gonna win. And by the way, us, the followers of Jesus, being kind of like the second and third and fourth and 12th in command of the good guy, we're also that's gonna be really good for us when he wins, because he's gonna be king, and then we'll be like kind of king, and it's going to be awesome. And then he goes away, Jesus, in this case, it's ambiguous. He goes away very abruptly. It's traumatic. It happens very quickly. And then we're told in the book of Mark specifically that he's back. We don't see him. We see this little kid in the tomb, which is weird to begin with. And the kid's like, you need to go back to Galilee, to Nazareth, where all of this started. You'll find him there. He'll be there. Jesus will be there. But you need to go there, back to the beginning. And then it says that the disciples were terrified, and then the book ends. God, I love it. Because it's real, right? You think things are going a certain way, and then something unexpected happens, something traumatic, something alienating, something apocalyptic. But it also brings you back to the beginning. It brings you back to where everything started, but you're changed. So it's changed. And you have to go back, but you can't go back. Of course that's terrifying. And so, of course, the cynicism and the bitterness and what I was feeling with Steve was exactly that. There was the anemoia, there was the nostalgia for this time that I thought I knew, that I never knew, and maybe I was masking the fact that perhaps things weren't exactly back then the way that I remembered, and maybe there was some kind of coping mechanism involved with me only remembering the good parts and maybe glossing over, papering over the contradictions, the struggles, the pain. And there's the trauma of the abrupt exit. There one day and gone the next, and that didn't see that coming. Trying to make sense of a world turned upside down. A reality so thoroughly deconstructed that none of the things that I could take for granted as being true anymore. Relationally, politically, theologically, socially. Alienating. Traumatizing. So I sat down in my thinking chair. I now had anemoia, and I now had alienation. What can I make with anemoia, a nostalgia for a time that never really was, and this traumatic alienation of absence of a person or a feeling or a safety in my life that was there and so rapidly and radically torn asunder. And I think I realized that I didn't have all the pieces yet. This was like Thursday, as we're following along in the week. I needed one more clue. So I went back to Steve. Dear Steve, I imagined myself saying, upon further reflection, maybe it's not quite as black and white as I had imagined. Because on the one hand, no. Things weren't as simple and rosy and warm and fuzzy back then. In a way they were, in part, sometimes. No, I didn't have debt yet. Yes, there was still this sort of kind of collective political optimism that at least the grown-ups had. And that trickled down to the rest of us. They were less anxious, or they were masking it better, I don't know. So yeah, that was true, and things were more complicated than I remember. There was tension in my house. No, my parents' relationship was not what I maybe thought it was or wanted it to be. Yeah, that bullying that I hadn't thought about in decades, that really did happen. There were heartbreaks. There were things that were scary. Some of them turned out to be legitimately scary. Others like acid rain, turned out to be less of a impending existential threat that I was raised to believe. But some of the other things, absolutely. It wasn't either or. It was both and. There was anemoia, there was alienation, but there was also growth. I learned things. And I might not have learned them if I didn't experience some of that alienation. Some of it was unnecessary, and that sucked. And as I began to realize all of this and think about it and reflect on it and think about this story in Mark and why do I love it so much and what is being communicated by this idea that Jesus is back, but he's not back, and you have to go back, but you can never be the same, but there's this cycle that you have to still experience, and it hit me. I was running again, which is really annoying because I don't like running. But apparently I need to do it to talk to Steve. It hit me that, hey, Steve, dear Steve, you weren't gone per se. I mean, you weren't where I left you, so to speak, but you didn't leave exactly. That's not an entirely fair assessment. To put it another way, Steve, you didn't leave. You kind of joined. See, because before you were separate. There was a screen. There was this barrier, this gap, this ditch, this distance between us. And I would bridge it by imagining that I was talking to you. You would pause at these certain times and allow me to respond to the questions that you asked. And I was pretty sure I had the right answers because you would say, "Oh yeah," and you would act like I said the right thing, and then you would kind of go on in this scripted way. And there was this gap that I only came to realize in my alienation and my cynicism and my bitterness that was all kind of it was a show. And you left the show. You left the production. You left the script that I was being fed, and quite frankly, that you were being fed or was being fed about you on your behalf. And you went and you experienced all the same things that I did. I mean, you said it. It was kind of hard. College was hard. Life is hard. Student loans, those are hard. Not looking forward to January. They've been on sabbatical, by the way, the student loans. They're coming back. I know you know. And so what I realized that in leaving, but actually joining, Steve was now able to be a part of my life in a way that was very different and perhaps much better than the version of Steve that I had before, hiding safely behind a screen, with his green striped rugby shirts and his felt boards and his little aphorisms. This Steve had really lived. This Steve could relate to me. This Steve was messy, imperfect, perhaps at times. Couldn't show up in all of the ways that would bail me out in overly simplistic ways when life got complex and complicated and contradictory. But this Steve could do something that the old Steve couldn't. The old Steve did, but couldn't. This Steve could really call me friend. This Steve could really be my friend. Because this Steve, no, he couldn't rescue me in some sort of fantastical fairy tale way. He couldn't skidoo into my complicated existence and skidoo us right back into this place. And part of the reason he couldn't do it is because he wasn't outside of it anymore. He was in it with me, part of it, part of me. This Steve was human. This Steve had experienced joy. Because that's the thing about growing up, right? Kids are binary. Good, bad, right, wrong, clean, unclean, in, out. Humans are binary too, by default, because, well, we used to be kids, and there's some kid in us still. But we don't have to be binary anymore. It doesn't have to be as simple as good, bad. We can use more complex categories, more mature categories. We can talk about love. Love isn't either or. Love sort of takes for granted a kind of risk. There's a giftedness to love, and by that I mean it's offered, when authentic, bearing the risk that it will not be reciprocated, that it will not be returned. It's risky. There's hope. Hope isn't optimism. It's not a naivety. And hope almost takes for granted that the odds are against us. To hope assumes a kind of failure. You can't have love without risk. You can't have hope without failure. Hope says, no, I see what you're saying. Nevertheless, doesn't lend itself to either or thinking. There's faith. Faith isn't a kind of naive certainty. It's a trust that even so, amidst the alienation, amidst the unknown, we're going to move forward. We can move forward. So if love takes for granted risk, and hope takes for granted failure, and faith takes for granted uncertainty and alienation, joy takes for granted loss. Joy says, no, that happened, and it wasn't good. Didn't feel good. It was alienating, and I can't cover it up with this anemoia, this remembrance of a time that never really was. But joy also says, and yet, almost defiantly, there's still beauty here. There's something to build or rebuild. Steve wasn't gone. He grew up, just like I did. And no, we couldn't go back, not exactly, to the way things were before. That's okay. Steve could offer me something new, something better, something more authentic. He talked about it. Steve and I could be friends, which is probably a much healthier relationship for he and I to have. So that's what Steve left me with this week. And it's what I leave all of you with. I hope it made sense. Steve is a metaphor.
Thinking about the God that a lot of us grew up with. We were taught that they were this parent figure, a good father, and then sometimes that doesn't resonate with us. Maybe we grew up with a single mother. Maybe we didn't have a mother or a father, but we grew up more with like this parent figure. And as we go through life, and we go through story, we're having to reclaim, reimagine, refriend these aspects of ourselves. As we're reparenting our inner child, maybe we do step out of that binary and embrace that joy and that goodness that carries the suffering and the pain and also the liberation. So I'm going to try to reclaim this song. And at the end, I invite you to be in conversation with each other, to be vulnerable with each other, to talk about how the metaphor landed with you in community, to tell each other how are you showing up to reparent yourselves as we do this work to see God more through childlike eyes. You're good, It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen different stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know that we're all searching for answers. You instill inside because you know just what we need before you say a word. You're a good, good mother. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. 'Cause you are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways to us. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways to us. A love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. A peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you hold me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you love. You're a good, good parent. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways to us. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways. You are loving in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good parent. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good parent. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you.
It's who I am. It's who I am. God, we thank you for these moments shared. Thank you for speaking to us. We ask that you be with us as we head back into our routines and that thing that is adulthood and the lives that we built. And may we sense your presence. May we sense your friendship. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you for being with us this morning. Hope to see you next week.